Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me on Facebook in the Sorcerers Guild. Today on Magical Theory, we are going to be talking about the importance of performance. Now, full disclosure, when I originally began planning for this episode, I was going to talk about illusion, sleight of hand, and other stage magic in the performance of actual spellcraft. After thinking on that for a while, I decided that it would be better to do an episode fully on the performance of spellcraft and the performance aspects in it. Now, performance itself matters, whether we are in spell work with ourselves or if we are working with a group. But it especially matters when you are leading a group. And this is where the optical illusions sleight of hand would come in. Yeah, like I said, my own great-grandfather actually used these types of things, and it was a very common practice, especially back in the day amongst your shamanic traditions. And what it is we use these techniques to suspend disbelief in the audience, to get them into that sense of wonder, so that we can get them to step beyond the psychic sensor and into belief in magic, so that we can guide their thoughts and their feelings into the work itself. Yeah? And in fact, stage magicians use this to this day to get you to believe more and more into what they're doing. And that's how they are able to so easily distract your mind, is by building you up to that point. Yeah? Now, I feel that in today's day and age, this type of magic lacks a resonance with the audience. Yes, back when nobody knew that the shaman was in there rattling the speaking lodge as the strange voices are coming out, when no one knew there was an optical illusion and trickery going on, it did help rise above the psychic sensor and get the audience into the proper mood. And there's deception going on here. And eventually that deception was discovered. And most people know about these types of tricks. So the second we see them, we are now simply enjoying a performance and not actually engaging in the ritual itself. So this type of persuasion no longer holds the sway that it once did, in my opinion. And so I honestly haven't studied much sleight of hand or optical illusion. My cousin, he went the opposite direction, and he studied a lot of that type of magic. And yes, his spells worked, but I feel that it was very different. It adds very different flavor to your magic and your spellcraft. Yeah, and I feel it's more important to build rapport and trust with the people that you work with, rather than getting them to be more and more convinced that you can do the impossible. Yeah? So, you have never once seen me use any kind of sleight of hand or trickery in any of my videos. Most of the videos I'm just talking anyways, but even them ceremonial videos, the few that I have done, or demonstrations, some interesting things have happened. I have not used illusion or stagecraft in any of that. And I will not. Yeah? That being said, there is some advantage to creating the potential for illusion. Yeah? And this is where we want the physical manifestations. But there's a difference. Okay? So we're going to continue the illusion part, and then we'll get more into the other aspects of performance. But with all of this, like I said, what we're trying to do, and this part is still necessary, we're trying to build a thought process and bring the audience along with us on a journey. Just like when we're telling any story. Doing ceremony for an audience and telling a story are very much the same thing. Yeah? We are taking the people on a journey, and we want them to build a picture in their mind that can be focused and led. Okay. So anyways, with these optical illusions, if people know you're doing this, that affects the rapport with the audience, affects the trust. And when you are doing these tricks, you know you're doing them. So it's going to affect your own resonance with the magic itself. So I myself do not use these techniques for ceremony. Okay, so when do we use illusion? Because I actually do occasionally use illusion or trickery. This should be reserved for curse work. Yeah? That's the only place I've ever used it. And it has great effect. As I have said in my video on curse work, in my opinion, I like the subject that I am cursing to know they have been cursed. And if you can add some flair to that, a little bit of flash powder in your fingers to actually, I curse you, and whoosh, there's some smoke, especially to your non-believers, that sticks in their mind. Yeah? And like I said in that video, the best way to curse a person is to make them believe that they are cursed. So the trickery, the illusions, we save this for those that deserve trickery and illusion. Yeah? We don't use it for those, for our clients, for those that we are doing ceremony with. We don't want to be using these things for the people that we are teaching. We want to build trust and rapport. So, that being said, we do want to give a good performance. And this can be very important, even when working alone. Because there is an audience, always. I talk about this idea of, well, there's a collective unconscious and this idea of breaking the fourth wall. I'm just going to leave a video for that here because I don't want to get back into that for this video. I want to talk more about the fact that we are our own audience. Even when we're performing magic for ourselves, that aesthetic flow needs to be there. And that's how we get into it, is assuming the role of the spellcaster and allowing ourselves to perform the spell. Yeah? So that it sticks in our own minds. The important part of a performance, then, is the capture, the imagination of those that you are speaking to, or to capture your own imagination. Like I said before, doing ceremony is a lot like telling a story. And it's very important that it start the same way. It is a creation. You are creating a little reality within the ceremony. So you want to start at the beginning and work up to the crescendo and the moment that the spell work actually passes through that barrier. Yeah? Okay, so we start the story at the beginning, like I said, with the thought, and we create the intent. We tell them where the story is going to go, and then we create the form of that story as we create the world. It's just like any other spell. But the people are your audience. Or excuse me, of course the people are your audience. But the people are the variables that you work with. They are the thing that you are trying to create a flow within. So when you are working with an audience and you are giving a performance, you want to work the same way. You want to get that intent in there. You want to get that thought that is going to create emotion, and then that is going to create energy and motion, and then manifest into a full form. Ceremony, leading a ceremony or a ritual, is a lot like telling a story or casting a spell itself, where the people, the audience, are the energy within which you want to create a flow. And it's very similar, like I said, to a spell, and you can even follow that same pattern. The first thing is intent. You want to have the other people in the ritual or the audience to the ceremony know why they're there. If you're doing a rain dance, if you're doing a summoning, so the first thing you will do is say, we are here to summon X, whatever X is, and then you create the form. You talk about this creature. You tell a story of this being and how he will help you, and what he looks like. You get into detail, and you want to really get into it. Allow yourself to visualize it as well, because when you are visualizing what you are saying as well, that conveys to the audience. But also, we're literally creating the form. So you need to be doing this. You're not just performing, not just giving a performance, but literally performing the spell. Yeah, so you don't want to get wrapped up in the outwards and convincing them, because that doesn't work. You need to be convinced yourself. Convince yourself about how the being looks like and how he's going to appear, and your audience will be convinced as well. Okay, so we have the intent, we have the form, and now we have the charge. And this is, after we've told the tale, this is where we do, often you'll hear the chanting of the name over and over again, just like any other summoning. If you're not doing a summoning, whatever it is you're doing, once you've created that form, now you start talking about the power of it, and again, what it's going to do, and whatever it is that you're going to do to charge it. If you need to dance around, however your charge is, this is where you do your charge. Intent, form, charge, and then release, which in this case is going to be, well, I guess if you're summoning, then it's containment. So then we have the circle that's already been called, but that is when we pull the form down in. As we summon the creature in, you once again want to be telling the story of how it's going to arrive, creating that idea of containment in the arrival of the being. Yeah? So this is when we are convincing them that it is there. This is when we are stating where and how it will be. And this is where I mentioned before about the idea that creating the potential for an illusion of illusion that is necessary still within ceremonial craft. Okay, so we're not going to be purposely creating a manifestation, but we do want to have small particles floating in the air, particulate matter, so that the spirit can draw upon these things. Well, smoke, we can even use mirrors and lights, as long as we're not like shining lights purposely into an exact spot, or like creating a hologram by literally shining a shape into smoke. Because we can do these things, yeah, without using optical illusions on the TV or on the camera, post-editing details. There are ways to create the appearance of a manifestation. But again, you're going to know that's a manifestation, and your knowledge of the deceit is going to hamper the actual working of the spell. But we can provide odd lighting, mirrors, smoke, and this gives the being something to manifest within. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's talk a little bit more about manifestation of a spirit and how that happens. In a recent podcast, someone in the Chaos Magic community mentioned that one of their most successful invocations, once they were in the moment, once they were in the process of actually evoking the spirit, that somehow the way that the chair behind them lined up with the poster behind that made him appear within that. Like he was looking at the way the chair and the poster combined or aligned, and he saw that in that. That's kind of hard to explain. And what's going on there is that our mind can't fully grasp what it is we're looking at. So it has to open up in between. It has to find ways to manifest and pull things together in something that can create a cohesive perception for us. Another good example of this is in my own work recently. I was actually working with Eshu, and I was in the bath, and there's a lot of steam coming up. And as he came through, originally I was looking over at the mirror into the steam, and just the way that the mirror curved and the way the steam was going on the mirror slowly formed like a face that then came out to me. And I could see this face in the way the mirror was shaped. And that's what we're providing them with this, with the particulate matter, smoke, lights, that sort of thing, is we're giving them things to bend. Because that's what they need to allow themselves to manifest. Now, the important part here, to get this correct, is, again, not to actually create the form, but to give them the things to work with so that we can get where we are actually going rather than directing it. Because yes, maybe you can get a manifestation that will allow the being to appear using more optical illusions, but you're going to be controlling it. And you yourself are going to be aware of the illusion, and it's going to cause doubt within the self, and at the very least, affect the potency of the ritual in total. This idea of illusions, I want to come back once more to illusion, because there is a difference between illusion and sleight of hand. And there are many different types of illusion. Okay, there are the illusions like the type that I mentioned earlier, how my grandfather used lights to make it look like the participants in the ritual were dancing, were walking on water. Yeah? That is a material illusion. Now, there are other types of illusions which are much more magic based, and this is the type that we are really seeking. We are seeking the combination, really, between these two when we are doing ceremony, especially if we are doing some sort of summoning. Now, that isn't the only time we're going to be doing ceremony, depending on what our skill set is. One could be doing healing work. Ceremony is very important there, in fact. With healing work, we really need to convince the person that we are working with that they can be healed. Okay, we're not shooting for just the placebo effect, but that is the way in. With healing or cursing, the first most important thing is convincing your target that you can. Yeah, even with possessions, like I talked about in the last video, anytime you're trying to affect another person, the most important thing is to convince them that you can. And so that's why we need performance. But anyways, I'm getting off track here a little bit. So with illusions, when we are talking about a mental illusion, this is very much spellcraft operating, starting on the mental plane. And it works in the same way that the creation of reality does. Yeah? You want to create a thought within your audience. And then from that thought, we create concepts. And then we give that concept a form. As that information in transfer condenses around that form, it creates an idea. And as that idea condenses, we then present it to the audience as a manifestation, almost like on the physical plane. I have actually seen people do incredible things with that alone. In fact, there was one time I knew someone that, well, he wasn't very good at other types of magic, but at least on one occasion, he actually told us all a story, had us all gathered around, told us a story about a spider, and he did so well at telling the story, but by the end of it, he threw a bit of coffee creamer. That's what it was. He had this coffee creamer that we all knew he had the coffee creamer when he first picked it up, and he starts telling us all the story. And then at the end of the story, he flung the coffee creamer at us, and we all saw a spider. Yeah? And that's because of this build-up of thoughts around a concept, condensing into a form, and then being released. So there is a lot that can be used here And when we use it, get it to that extent, now we're back to getting the audience to step past that moment of belief. To actually cast the spell. Because when we are doing ceremony, it's not just about getting the audience to enjoy the performance. That's important. That is important because that's what guides them along. But it's getting them to step past that boundary. To suspend disbelief. Yeah? And that's why, to me, it's important not to use physical trickery when doing such. Because, like I said, people know about physical trickery. And either you have to tell them beforehand, which means that they will suspect the trickery and it will create a different resonance within the spell. Even if they are suspending that disbelief, they're not fully suspending it. They're knowing that, well, part of their mind is knowing, well, this is just a trick. This is just fun. So that detracts from that flow. Or you don't tell them, and they become suspicious, and perhaps figure it out, and that's going to completely ruin the rapport that you have with your audience. If they catch even the slightest hint that you were deceiving them, without telling them, you will be deceiving them, essentially. So, I don't recommend either path, and I don't use anything, but like I said, there will be occasionally videos where the lighting is going to be strange, there will be smoke, stuff like that, but I'm never intentionally going to create a physical illusion. Okay, so, I think that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you once again for joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Until next time, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.